Hey everybody. So I just finished kind of my customary walk and made it back to the house and had a lot of thoughts on the way home that I got to talk to my husband about. And then I was like, maybe I should share some of these thoughts. So a couple of things, because things were coming through my feed, and it seems to happen. It seems to happen quite often that these things come through my feed, and when we have these types of situations happening where there's been a loss of life, in particular a loss of life of a person of color, and then it's a very systematic and predictable set of events that happen, right? And it's been happening for quite some time. It's not like this is a new playbook that comes out, right? This is a playbook that has been around for decades, if not centuries, who knows? But it's that, there is a crime, a violent crime against a person of color, done by a set of individuals who are supposed to be held to a higher standard, that being law enforcement. That crime happens, people pick sides and get upset on either side. Then protests happen. Then protests turn into riots. Then riots turn into looting, oftentimes not by the same people who were protesting and or even rioting. Then people switch sides. Then charges are either brought or not, usually not. Then charges that happen to be brought, then often usually there's no conviction. People point fingers, people blame people. It's a whole lot, right? It's a pretty methodical thing. People start blaming the victims. People start and there's a culture of this just in general. This is not just with people of color, but you see it with rape victims. People, you'll hear people who are like, well, maybe her skirt should have been longer, or maybe she shouldn't have had too much to drink, or whatever the case may be, right? So you hear we have a general culture of blaming victims. In this case, the victim is a person of color, and there is a higher standard to which the person who passed judgment took a person's life in a most monstrous way. That's not expected. So I have just a few things I want to cover, and I jotted them down because I have a tendency to have a stream of consciousness, which sometimes people can't follow. Sometimes I can't follow because it leads me down all kind of rabbit trails. So I'm going to try to stay as succinct as possible. First thing. So for all the individuals who are out there making the argument about black on black crime, and how it's high, and no one's telling black people to stop with the crime. First of all, yes, black people do tell black people to stop crime. I mean, there are all types of programs around trying to prevent black people from committing crime. Secondly, though, that's really not the point, right? Because the real thing is that criminals, so people who kill people without cause, will do criminal behavior. That is what they do. So whether it is a white person, a Mexican person, a black person, it doesn't matter. If you are a violent criminal, that is what you do. You subject people to violence. So black on black crime, the criminals will kill people. And no one is out here protesting. So if a white person kills a black person and they're criminals, no one's out here running around protesting because one drug dealer shot another drug dealer. No one's taken to the streets protesting that. If a black person kills a white person, again, two drug dealers kill each other, no one's out there protesting anything, right? So again, criminals will kill criminals. So that is usually that's usually what we're talking about when we're talking about black on black crime. We're not talking about, two innocent people just decided to get in the street and shoot each other. That's usually, I'm not saying that doesn't happen, I'm just saying usually that's not what happens. So could we please stop with the black on black crime and how we need to fix it? Because there are a ton of programs in place. People are obviously trying to put measures to help people of color find other avenues other than a criminal avenue, and knowing that criminals kill other criminals both in their own race and outside of their race. So let's nix that. The issue here is that a person who is not supposed to be a criminal, who swore an oath to protect and serve the community with an unbiased view of that community, of all communities, who is supposed to take the higher ground and be trained at how to de-escalate a situation, a person who is supposed to have the moral high ground and be honorable, because you want us to call you honorable so-and-so, the honorable and noble job of such and such, right? That's the person who has committed the crime. That is why it is so outrageous. So throwing other stats to water that down is a disservice. It's disingenuous, and it's part of the problem, because it's not apples to apples comparison here. So we're talking about people who have been known to kill people, even right here in the Houston area. A few months ago, we had officers with a no-knock warrant went in and shot up the place, killed people, and Houston responded, right? So again, the response was not because two criminals killed each other. The response was that you have people who are supposed to be in a law-abiding, stand-up. We have a code that we operate by. That code is one that's based on morals. It's based on an oath we took, and we have deviated from that and become deviants. So that's the outrageous part. So let's compare apples to apples, not apples to broccoli. Okay, so second thing. When we talk about the looting and people who have turned to violent expressions, which are rioters, so whether it's burning up stuff, flipping over cars, whatever the case may be, right? By no means is that behavior condoned at all. It's unacceptable. It's counterproductive, right? Oftentimes it is not the people who set out to protest. So we also need to keep that in mind. As the mayor has said, and the governor has said, that most of the people in Minneapolis and St. Paul that were doing the destructive activities were not from Minneapolis or St. Paul, right? So we've seen that time and time again also. That's the playbook. People come in from other states, cause significant distractions to the point of the protest, and often try to work out their own agendas, right? And we've seen that across plenty of protests. So not just protests that are related to violent crimes, but even people protesting issues, Tea Party, women's issues, all sorts of stuff, right? We've always seen people who are not a part of the protest try to come in and stir up something to be a distraction and to create a problem for the people who are there abiding by what they are supposed to be abiding by. So the other thing, even if the looters and rioters are from the area, let's just pause and replay the moment for a second, right? So 5 days ago or a week ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, nobody's city was on fire. Unless, of course, obviously there was like an actual real fire that took place from like electrical things, whatever. Anyway, no one's city was on fire. Nobody was in the streets flipping cars over. No one was breaking windows, tearing things down. No one was doing any of this. That wasn't happening, right? So there was a demarcation in history that gave reason for people to rationalize and decide that that was the behavior they wanted to do. That demarcation was the loss of life. Someone was alive 2 weeks ago that is not alive today, and their life was taken by the hands of somebody who should not have been taking it, especially in the way in which they took it. 8.5 minutes on somebody's neck. So that means we as a society can continue to talk about the looters and the rioters, or we can talk about the thing that was the catalyst to even providing the pathway to loot and to riot. So again, we can keep walking in circles, because as I started, I was like, this is the same methodology that happens all the time. It is the same approach that happens. It's very predictable, and everybody should have seen this coming, because it happens every single time. So, and it's because we keep having the conversation about the looters and the rioters, instead of having the conversation about why people took to the streets to begin with to protest. After they took to the streets to protest, right? Because then that's the opportunity that opportunists who are looters use. They're like, oh my gosh, there's thousands of people in the streets. Let's go ahead and steal some stuff too, right? So they use that. If we could rewind the tape a bit and look at the reason why people took to the streets to begin with and address that problem, then we could get ahead of all future protests. We could really get ahead of all future protests if we address the issue of why people are in the streets to begin with, which is what gives the looters and the rioters the opportunity. Because again, no one was looting and rioting 2 weeks ago. People saw this as an opportunity to carry out their own agendas. So if we could just say, you know what? Here's a novel idea. Let's address the reason why people are protesting, and then they won't have to protest, and then people won't be looting and rioting. Oh dear, that's an amazing idea. Let's try that. Let's try that approach. Let's address why people decided they needed to protest. Let's do that. Last and final point is to the protesters themselves. This is to the protesters, not to the looters and rioters, because the looters and rioters, they are expressing criminal behavior, and therefore they need to have the criminal consequences, similarly as the officer who exercised a criminal activity by standing, all three of them, on an individual for 8.5 minutes, also exercised a criminal activity, and should also, the fullest extent of the law, should be levied against them. So to protesters, both now and in the future, I have a suggestion. Because there are opportunists out there who will take your cause, your very justifiable cause, and create a distraction that does not suit your cause, and many people are unable to separate the distraction from the cause. My suggestion is, in the future, both now and in the future, how about we change the way that we protest? And I'm suggesting that you do an immobile protest, which means instead of walking down the street, which makes, again, gives officers the reason to say that you were, resisting because you didn't stop and turn around, or you were still walking away from them as they were talking to you. It gives looters and rioters the opportunity to blend in and begin to incite things. What if we got to the locations, and even if it meant, you stretched out 4 miles long down whatever main street that you want to stretch down, but what if we all got to the locations that we wanted to protest and sat down or kneeled or laid on your stomach? To which point, anybody who's not kneeling, sitting, or lying is obviously not with your protest. Barring like camera people who would be there with cameras and then obviously not be looting and rioting, news crews and stuff like that. It would also cause officers who are out for blood to have to physically take down somebody that they have no excuse to take down, because I'm already seated. So it's obvious I can't resist. I'm seated. I can't resist because I'm kneeling, and I can't resist because I'm laying. So if you haul me away in cuffs, Mr. Officer, that's a whole different conversation we have to do, and a whole different set of potential complaints and lawsuits that would be mounted, right? Same thing with looters and rioters. If you're laying, sitting, or kneeling, and again, it makes a huge statement to me to just look to see the news coverage from the air that what it would look like to have 4 miles of people who are kneeling, standing, or lying down the main street of a city. So I am suggesting that as an option, one, to de-escalate officers who are out for blood, and at that point, then you really see people's heart unfold. because they have drugged you up from your lying position, your seated position, or kneeling position, swearing that you were aggressive, swearing that you were resisting, and we know that that's not the case. Also, it would help identify those people who are not with your cause because they are up walking around masked up looking for windows to break and to steal stuff. Right? So in the future and now, I offer that suggestion to protesters. Someone left a comment, George Floyd and the officer involved not only knew one another, but they also worked together as bouncers at the same nightclub. There's more to this event than people know. I would agree, William. There's a lot more to this. I'm sure a lot of is going to unfold over time. He clearly had motive. Why we have a third-degree murder charge is just lazy. I would also like to propose, I know I said that the comment to the protesting was the end. I would also like to propose that district attorneys who convene grand juries because they don't want to do their job, the moment a district attorney says I'm impaneling a grand jury should be the moment that citizens start to look for a brand new district attorney. And because it's the lazy man's way out and it's a way for you to stay neutral. And again, neutral in times of injustice means you're really not for justice. So those are my three kind of points that I was thinking about. And I really want everyone to stay safe. I would really like for everyone to focus on the catalyst to the events that happen and to address those things. So that we can stop seeing this same cycle happen, this very predictable cycle happen. And I would like for us to all give way to everyone's humanity, understanding that everyone has some element of humanity to them, and to recognize that in all humans. So that's all I have. I hope you guys have a great Sunday. I know plenty of things are weighing heavy on everybody. And hopefully even in that, even as you reflect, you will find solutions and silver linings and new ways to create opportunities to improve things, and to make being a citizen in the United States and being in the United States a better place to be for every single person who is here. So I will talk to you guys later. Have a great Sunday. Bye.